Hi friends, Amanda here. Thanks for joining me for today's mandatory activity. We are making soap today. We are making a wood grain soap. So I'm going to take you through the process. I will lay out sort of the techniques and the supplies. I can't seem to get myself to speak and make soap at the same time. I'm just, for whatever reason, my brain's not making that connection. When I'm making soap, I'm like doing the math in my head, making sure I'm following the right steps. Very, very careful when I'm using lye to just be super conscious of my surroundings. So if you're someone who really enjoys sort of a live tutorial, I apologize, my brain's not there. So what you're gonna get instead is my voiceover, but I'll tell you all of the things. I'm not gonna leave anything out. I will fast forward through the stuff that's repetitive, but you don't need to watch me mix 6 colors. And I will share with you some of the things I'm going to do the next time that I make this soap, which will definitely be a bigger batch because it turned out really cool and the fragrance is lovely. It's a brambleberry, rustic woods, and rum fragrance. And after it cured, it smelled just as good. So it's a really beautiful soap. It was a really fun project, and let's get to it. Okay, starting with safety gear, I've got a mask, I have my long rubber gloves, my goggles. I am mixing up my Lye Water Solution. Obviously, this is going to depend on what recipe you have chosen. But I have my distilled water measured out. I'm measuring out the appropriate amount of lye, and I'm going to take this off of the scale and get it fully incorporated. While my lye is cooling off, I'm going to go ahead and get my cups ready. I am doing several colors for this soap, and right now I'm just putting the batch oils into the cups so that I can disperse my pigment into the batch oils. Brown oxide pigment by Brambleberry is one of my colors. And when I do this again next time, I will do less colors. I think I really kind of overdid it with how many shades I thought should be in a wood grain. And really what I think ends up looking nicest are the areas where there's high contrast. So I'll definitely do that dark brown by Brambleberry again, but natural umber, like this one, ended up turning kind of like a green shade. And one of them is very red, and I felt like it was a little too many colors. I think this is the one that's green, the light sienna. It did darken when it cured. Red ochre. And a mixture of gold sparkle mica by Brambleberry and the dark yellow ochre by Earth Pigments. And I am doing 1 tablespoon of oils to 1 teaspoon of colorant. And you can see I just added sort of a smidge of mica. I'm going to get these really well mixed together. I'm going for like a sort of a thick paste. So that's actually looking pretty good, or thin paste rather. Go ahead and get all these blended. This next step is optional. It's sodium lactate. I like to add it into my recipe if it's something I'm not familiar with, either recipe-wise or design-wise, because it does help harden your bars and make it easy to unmold. So in this case, I haven't done a wood grain technique before, so I'm going to go ahead and add sodium lactate into my lye water solution at 1 teaspoon per pound of batch oils. And my lye water solution has cooled down now. It's close to 100 degrees, and my oils are about 95. And I'm going to measure out the appropriate amount of fragrance for this batch size. I'm going to use this rustic woods and rum scent from Brambleberry. It's really, really nice. There's definitely a wood scent, but as it gels and cures, that rum really comes through at the end, so it's got like a really sweet finish. A little bit of musk. It's very, very pleasant. I would say probably more unisex than anything else. So I'm just separating this fragrance into teeny tiny little cups because I'm going to scent each of my colors separately. I want to have as much work time as possible with this recipe, and use your batter nice and liquidy for a good wood grain effect. So I'm going to give these colorants just one more stir. They've been sitting while I was waiting for the lye water to cool off, and I just want to make sure there aren't any clumps of colorant sitting at the bottom of these cups. And then we can go ahead and pour the lye water solution into the oils. So the batch oils I'm using today are the Royalty Soaps batch, the basic batch recipe. I will go ahead and include a link to one of Royalty Soap's videos. She includes her recipe in every video, so it's not a secret. It's not her frosting recipe. It's just the base recipe, but it's kind of my go-to. So, and I'm familiar with it, so it's an easy recipe for me to kind of adapt. So those are my oils. I'm checking the lye temperature and oil temperature one more time before we pour them in there, and make sure that nothing is sort of cooled down on me while I was mixing up the colors. And we're going to go ahead and pour in the lye water solution down the shaft of the blender. And we're going to mix it until it's just past emulsion. Now again, I need this recipe to stay runny, and when you stick blend your batter, it can get, it can get thick on you pretty quickly. So I'm doing as little stick blending here as possible. I'm gonna, kind of stir and try to get to as close to emulsion as I can. Push this so you can see a little bit better. And once I've got it kind of generally mixed, to go ahead and turn the blender on. Oh, I love this part where the lye and the oils kind of bloom to the surface like that, a little whirlpool effect. And once you kind of get them up at the top, you can turn off the blender again and just give it a little stir by hand with your stick blender. And you can tell that you've reached emulsion once you don't have any oils sitting free on the top of the surface anymore. Make sure that they're fully incorporated. And I'm really trying to get to just past emulsion and not to really to trace. So you can see this batter's nice and fluid, still very liquidy, so we're in really good shape for a nice fluid pour. I've got a lot of batter here because I'm making more than one batch of different soaps at a time, so I've made up enough batter to do a couple of batches. So I'm going to split off enough of this batter for the single loaf of Woodgrain soap that I'm doing today. And I'm going to set that aside until I'm finished with this one and then go to the next one. So I'm actually just going to go ahead and mix my colors directly into my colorant cups. I don't need a lot of any one color other than sort of a medium brown. So all of these sort of accent colors, I'm just filling up with batter. And again, I'm just going to mix them in the cups, so I'm not making a whole lot of extra dishes. Right, so that's the medium brown that I'm going to mix into the bowl so that I have the most of that color. Give these a good stir. And I haven't yet added in the fragrance. So right now I'm just mixing the batter and the colorant together. And I'm doing that by hand. I don't want to use my stick blender. Obviously those cups are too small to stick blend anyway, but I really want this to stay fluid, so I'm doing as much of this by hand as I can. Okay, so fragrance is going to go into the big bowl, and then I'm adding them into the little containers, and I quickly decide here that there's just too much in this dark brown, so I'm going to put that into a regular size container just so I have room to mix it up. I don't want to slosh it out of the little cup. Okay, so the fragrance is in all of our colors, and now I'm going to go ahead and set up the pour. So to do this technique, you're going to start with a pour down the side of your container. You can see it's dragging itself down the side of the container, and you're going to alternate with the other colors in the same way. So down the side of the container, you'll see it kind of pool and displace the color underneath it, and that's what's going to kind of help create the stripy effect from the wood grain. And I think that this color and the first one I poured are just a little too similar in shade, and so I kind of wish that I hadn't done that. I think that's redundant. So when I do this again, I'll pick a better color. So here we go with that rich brown oxide from Brambleberry. And again, I like the the contrast. So whenever I do a dark, I like to do a light right behind it because I feel like that's, you know, a really sort of striking part of the design. So I'll speed this up. It's just more of the same. I'm not going in any particular order, just alternating. Trying to make sure I do sort of more of that medium brown since I know I have more of that color. And now we're ready to pour. So I'm putting this towel down so I can set my mold on an angle. So I want it to be sort of, there you go, on an incline. And you're going to take that pour container, which is so pretty already, and you're going to pour it down the side of the mold. And you can see it's nice and liquidy. This is just what you want. So going back and forth down the side of the mold like this is what's really going to create that wood grain effect. And you can see here I'm wiggling back and forth. That's what's going to give you those knots in your pattern. You're going to see it emerging here, and as you start to fill this mold, you'll need to remove the towels and flatten it out, because at this point, if I keep pouring, it's just going to come out the side of the mold. And so it's going to sort of ooze down the side a little bit more. I still have one towel underneath it. I'm going to go ahead and refill my container just while I'm paused. I can see that I don't have a whole lot left. So we're going to use the same process and pour down the side of the cup, alternating colors. And some of them are getting a little thick. That mustard I just poured was a little bit thick. You can see the brown just sort of ran on top of the mustard instead of displacing it. So at this point I decide I need to hurry up a little bit. Alright, so this will get us to the rest of this design. So I'm still on a half incline here, and I'm kind of running it back and forth across the top since there's no side to run it down anymore. But I'm trying to remember to still continue to do those little jiggles so I get the knot design. Taking the last cloth out from underneath it. And so now we're flat. And I'm just going to go ahead and empty out the last of the container. So this is not going to be the side of, or the top of the soap. So I don't care too much what pattern is on this side. It'll be the side of the bars, not, you know, the main pattern. So that's why I'm kind of haphazardly emptying out all the soap. I don't want to waste anything. But clearly I'm I'm ruining what looked like the wood grain pattern, but that's not the direction the pattern will be in. And you'll see when we go to cut the soap what I mean. You have to sort of hunt for the pattern. So I'm going to go ahead and just leave it here. Since I'm doing another soap, I need to get it out of my way. So I'm going to go ahead and move it and put it somewhere safe to rest for 24 hours. And now here we go. This is the next day. You can see one of those browns is sort of decidedly green. It does mellow out back into kind of a light brown, but it looks kind of army green at the moment. This is the Brambleberry 10-inch loaf mold, which I like. It does typically release pretty well, and again it's got that sodium lactate in it, so that does help get it out of the mold. And you can see some of that stripy pattern from the side, so that's the side of the mold, and that's, you know, part of where we're going to find our wood grain. So you kind of have to take your loaf and divide it up. I'm taking my guide off of my cutter here because I need to cut this loaf into chunks that are the same width as a bar. So you'll see what I mean in a second here. I'm going to end up with basically two 3.5-inch size chunks and then a little bit of leftover. So when you cut it, you get something that doesn't look like wood grain at all. So this is what you have on the inside. It kind of looks feathered, but the wood grain is on the side. So now that you've cut that loaf, you'll be able to turn it and cut to find the wood grain. So we're going to do one more to get that second bar-sized loaf cut. That'll make more sense in a second. Okay, so there's the second sort of weird feathery part. Now I'm putting the guide back onto my cutter, and I'm going to take each of those sections and turn it 90 degrees and cut them this way, and that is where the wood grain comes out. That's a little counterintuitive, but it's really, really effective. I don't know why my camera chose to not focus on the action, but here we go. I just cut off the end to clean it up, and you can already see now there's that beautiful wood grain. I'll come in for a close-up. There you go. So you gotta dig for it, gotta hunt for it. But there's the back. There's the other side. It just turned out really, really nicely. So I'll go ahead and get the rest of this cut up. And so the last thing I'll say here is I think that the ochre is a little too mustardy. I think next time I'll just add some ochre into the sort of medium brown, and maybe the same with the red ochre as well, or red umber, just so the different shades of brown. I think that would be better and probably easier too. But thanks for joining me for the project. I loved it. I think it turned out really well in the end. This is called Naughty by Nature in my shop, which goes with the Naughty by Nature candle. But you can see there that the colors are all a little bit more muted. Thanks for joining me. Bye.